Okay, this video is all about solving equations. We're going to start with the basic principles of solving equations. The idea with solving equation is we're trying to work out what the value of the letter is, also called a variable. And to do that, what we tend to do is we tend to do the opposite operation to go backwards and find out what it was. So let's take a basic one to start with. So x plus 5 is equal to 8. Now, it's very easy to work out, well, what plus 5 gives me 8? Well, that must have been 3. But the principle is what we're going to do to one side, we're going to do to the other, and we're going to undo what's happened. So what has happened to x? We added 5. How do you undo adding 5? You minus 5. It's called the inverse operation. So one way of setting it out is to build what we call a wall. Now, in order to get rid of the plus 5, we're going to minus 5. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So on this side, the 5's have disappeared, and I'm left with x. And on this side, 8 take away 5 is 3, which is exactly what we said to start with. Now, this method is very useful when they get complicated. So I'm going to do it with all the easy ones first, so you can see how it works for the more complicated questions. Right, let's try another one. How about x minus 5 equals 1? Once again, you could probably figure out what, when I take 5 away from it, gives me 1. But let's do the method. So to undo minusing 5, we're going to add 5. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. Now minus 5 plus 5 disappears. So I'm left with x. And on this side, 1 plus 5 is 6, which is probably what you were thinking in the first place. Right, let's try another 2. So if I have 4x is equal to 24. Now what you've got to remember is 4x means 4 times x. So how do you undo a times? Well, the opposite of timesing is dividing. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide this side by 4, and then we're going to divide this side by 4. Now 4x's divided by 4 is just 1x. 24 divided by 4, hopefully you know your tables, is 6. We don't normally write that one. Normally we just leave our answer as x equals 6. But when you're learning, it's perfectly acceptable to put that 1. So when I add, I subtract. When I'm subtracting, I add. When I'm timesing, I divide. So the last one must mean that when I divide, I must multiply. So here's an example. So x over 9 is equal to 3. Well, what's happened to x? I've divided it by 9. How do you undo a divide? We times. So build my wall, times both sides by 9. Now this disappears. If you divide by 9 and then times by 9, you get back to where you started, which is just the x. And 3 9s are 27. Let's check that one. 27 divided by 9 is 3. Yep, we must be right. So that's how we solve basic equations. Let's try the two-step equations now. So two-step equation is where we have two operations happening at the same time. Once again, I'm going to build my wall. Now, the order of which we undo this matters. So what's happened? I've got an x, I've times it by 3, and then I've added 1. So it first got times by 3, and then we added 1. So to go backwards, we're going to get rid of the add 1 first. This is an important principle. Get rid of what you're adding or subtracting first. So I'm going to minus the 1, because that's the opposite, from both sides. Well, plus 1 minus 1 means they vanish, but I've still got 3 x's. 13 take away 1 is 12. Now remember, this means times. So to undo a times, I'm going to divide. So divide by 3, divide by 3. This just gives me that 1x, and this side gives me 4. Remember that 1 doesn't need to be there, and we can just write it as x equals 4. Let's test it. Take 4, times it by 3, gives me 12. add 1 gives me 13. So I know I'm right. Right, let's try another one. Sometimes when you do these two-step equations, the answer doesn't come out to be a very nice number at all. And this is what to do in those situations. So like we did before, we're going to get rid of the add 1 first. How do you get rid of an add 1? You minus 1. So we minus 1 from both sides. On this side, we're left with a 5x. And this side, I'm left with 16. Now remember the next step, this means times. So to undo a times, we divide. 5x divided by 5 is 1x. Now hopefully you know that you cannot divide 16 by 5 nicely. There's going to be a remainder. So what we do is we leave this as an improper fraction. We leave the answer as 16 over 5. So I minus the 1 first, then I divide by 5, and because it doesn't go, I leave it as 16 over 5. And that is two-step equations.